Vas, thank you for joining us here today. So you're going on almost 100 days now as being CEO, but you've been in Novartis for 13 years. What did you expect to happen that hasn't happened, or anything that surprised you about taking this top role?
You know, what I like to joke about is the thing that surprised me is how now everything I say is under the microscope, and that started very early on. I had dinner with the Trump administration, then with dinner with Macron, and I hadn't appreciated that in this role you become not just a business leader, but also somebody who is a world leader, and you have to take that on very seriously. And then the last part of the journey is for these first 100 days has been big decisions. You know, when you think about selling big stakes or buying new technologies, and now for the first time you have really no one else to talk to. I mean, you've got to make the call. That's definitely a new experience as well, but I'm totally energized by it, I have to say.
What's that process like?
Well, you know, it's been a story for me throughout my career because of my age relative to my peers. I always try to come from a place of I'm a player coach. I'm not the boss. I always think I have a whole movement in the company now to be the unboss. I want us to unboss the company, and I think it's existential because if we don't figure out a better way to unleash the power of our people, these incredible people we have, I don't think we can attract millennials. I don't think we're going to get the best ideas in a very competitive world. Because people really see the culture in their first manager. And that's the journey I'm on right now, is to really say, how do I get the 11,000 managers at Novartis to all live this new culture every day?
How do you do it?
Yeah, it starts with a lot of communication. But I think the biggest connection I have to make for every leader in the company is that you're going to get great performance by embracing a servant leadership mindset and actually really empowering your people. First, I say, please be patient because this is not going to be an easy journey. The second thing I say is for every associate at the company to tell a different story. So cultures are built on stories. Cultures are built on the way we talk about our company and talk to one another. So if everyone can tell the story of the future rather than the story of the past, the culture starts to change. And I really, really believe that. The third thing I do is I tell everyone to fix one thing. Everybody can fix one thing, down to our sales rep in a far out place. They can change one behavior. And if everyone in 120,000 people starts to fix one thing, you start to see a movement happen.
One of the points that you've made is that you don't just want to change how the company operates, but you think that you need to regain the trust of the world. Why use the word regain? Where do you think the pharma industry is and where it needs to be?
You know, when you look back again at history, in 1980s, early 90s, this was one of the most respected industries in the world. And this was the industry that brought forward the vaccines that now enable hundreds of millions, if not billions of children to be able to live a disease-free childhood. All of the breakthroughs that transformed cardiovascular disease, neuroscience, ophthalmology came from this industry. Somewhere along the way, we lost our connection to our role in society. Now, when I think about where we are, we have to regain this trust with society. It's all about give and take. We have to be able to be part of the solution. If we just think as an industry, we can just keep the status quo, I think we're not going to be successful. So what does that mean concretely? That means from a pricing standpoint, we have to price our medicines in a way that's reflective of the value they create. And we have to be comfortable with the fact that if our medicines aren't creating enough value for society, then people aren't going to want to pay for them. I think second, we have to really think about access. So how do you give access to people in communities where we work, but also in the poorest communities in the world? So we can no longer live in a world where we bring breakthrough innovation to some parts of the world, and in many other parts of the world don't receive that innovation for 20 years. And then I think the third thing is going to be taking bold action in certain areas where there's a big global health crisis. One of the things I was most excited about as somebody who worked in Africa and really worked on malaria control and HIV control before leaving medicine, is we committed this week to spending $100 million to develop new malaria medicines that are critical for getting malaria under control.
So how do you manage that, though, with investors expecting those returns? You're in a business that it costs, on average, $2 billion to bring a drug to market these days. The ROI is very difficult.
One of the things I always tell our leaders is we can't live in a world where we operate in poles, right? It's got to be the and statement, not the or statement. So it's the short and the long term. It's not the short or the long term. And it's our job as leaders to balance those things out so that we, for all of our stakeholders, and I believe in a multi-stakeholder model.
You've talked about the need to bring in new talent, especially digital talent. How do you make sure that you're bringing in the right people? What makes someone question whether they should be at Novartis?
It's a tough sell for many people, but the number one thing we have going for us is our purpose. You can work at a company where people who are going blind can suddenly see their grandchildren again. That's a kind of purpose that's pretty extraordinary. So you can go to a data scientist and say, look, yes, we're not as advanced as Google or Microsoft in AI. We don't have the great platforms. What I can promise you is if you come, you will be working on some of humanity's greatest health challenges. And if you could have an impact on that, wouldn't that be something extraordinary? And those are the people anyway we want to come. And if that's why they come, then so be it.
I'd love to talk about your career path for a little bit. You are a physician. You were a consultant at McKinsey. You've headed up a R&D organization, and now you're the CEO. It's a very unusual career progression. How have you made those decisions of when to totally pivot on what you've been doing into something else?
You know, I developed in medical school and actually even before medical school a deep passion for public health. I'd spent time in Africa working on malaria control and HIV as well as in TB in Peru. And I decided for myself that I wanted my life to be about having a dramatic, massive impact on the health of the world. How do I inspire a healthier world is how I think about it. And then at each decision point, I kept asking myself, what would be the thing that would help me have that impact? You know, when I first left medicine to go to McKinsey, it wasn't because I wanted to be a McKinsey consultant per se, but it was a place I could learn a lot to hopefully have a better impact. One example of a contrarian career move I made, I was at Novartis Pharmaceuticals, kind of the heart of the company, and I went to our smallest unprofitable division, Novartis Vaccines. Why? I'm a public health physician. Vaccines reach hundreds and hundreds of millions of children. And if I could develop more vaccines and we could impact and all those children, that would be something extraordinary. So I made a plunge. It was definitely a rough ride at the start. But in the end, we developed vaccines that mean no child in the world has to die from meningitis again, as those vaccines are made available. So that's the lens I've taken, and I've been also very fortunate to have great mentors and great people to support me.
What did your mentor say when you said you were going to go run a vaccine division that was not very sexy within the company?
It was interesting. I have to say, many of the layers in the organization, the traditional layers of advice, human resources, all told me this was a career killer. But I have to say, at the time, our now chairman and then soon-to-be vaccines head at the time, Jörg Reinhardt, said this was the absolute right thing to do. And even the CEO and chairman, because I was viewed as a talent in the company, he said, where are you passionate? What are you passionate about? Just do that. Don't worry about the titles and where you are in the hierarchy and all what the people say. You know, just do what you're passionate about. It was the best advice that I could have been given.
Is that the same advice you give people?
Same advice I give people. Follow your passion, and the rest will take care of itself. I mean, we haven't talked about it yet, but I'm obsessed with leadership books, and I love figuring out how to lead teams and lead organizations, and that was the recipe for me. I think for everybody, they have to find their own course.
What's your favorite leadership book?
My favorite leadership book is the Tao Te Ching. So in 700 BC, Lao Tzu was a Chinese government official, and he wrote this very simple book. And if you read this book, it still has all of the things you'll find in any number of business books that you'll read today. He had all of the insights. It's such an interesting thing to me that even then we knew that leadership was about, he talks about servant leadership, talks about you have to think about a bigger purpose. I mean, all of the things we talk about were even understood then. This challenge is how to apply them. It's not knowing what they are. So that's my favorite leadership book. And the nice thing is it's really thin and you can fit it in your bag and keep it with you.